Hi, I'm Steve Robbins, guitar tech here at Maxwell's House of Music. We're in Repairland now, and what we're going to discuss this weekend is how to replace a nut. We found this broken nut because we were trying to intonate the guitar earlier, and it was a full step off. Well, what's happened is, if you can see this, this is the nut right here, and the strings, it kind of guides the string at the headstock end. The corner of it's chipped off, so it's not resting on the nut. That makes it go to the first fret. I made an F sharp out of it. So what we're going to do now is replace this nut. And the first thing to do is to loosen the strings. I like to take a razor knife and kind of go down each side of the old nut to make sure there's no glue that someone put in it to kind of squeezed out on each side. And then I take a sharp instrument. Here I have a small scratch awl. Since it's already broken, I'm not worried about tearing it up, getting it out. There's no saving it. Handy tool to have is a toothbrush. Get into places and brush out the excess like lint or dirt on the bridges, or just like I did there. So what I'm going to do is now take a file and try to clean this up a little bit. So what I have here is just a diamond file and flat. I'm not really trying to widen it this way. I'm just trying to make sure that the bottom of it, where I can see where glue has been put in there to hold the nut in place. And it is sort of a good idea to put glue on it. What I do is take super glue, put a drop on something that like an old string wrapper or a package like this. Put some super glue on it and take a toothpick and just put in it and put 2 little drops on it. Put the nut on it right away, immediately. Do that only after you know you have the nut shaped correctly. So this nut, the width is fine, but the thickness is not. So I'm going to have to sand this down. To speed up the process, I have this little belt sander that does the job. And now I have the nut in place with the strings over top. So everything pretty much is going to fit. And now the second thing we have to, second, third, or whatever, is space the strings and then notch them, file them down for the strings. Line up the strings where the outside ones are 1/8 of an inch in. And then space the other ones between that. And now what I'm going to do is find the gauges of the strings so that I can use what is called a nut file to file slots in this nut. So these are digital calipers. And so we starts out as a 50. We have to do now, I'm going to notch the first 2 and then measure the rest. So these are bass guitar files, bass guitar nut files. And since the first one was 105, I have here exactly a 105 on this side and a 65 on this side. So I'm going to take the 105 and start filing on it. You want to be real careful about when you're filing, you have this nut file that's flat, is to keep it, I guess, vertical of the fretboard. If you twist and turn, you're not going to have a nice notch in it. And the second thing you do, if you do this, you can pop the side out, and that's what we're trying to solve now, is taking care of putting a complete nut back in its place. So you want to keep it straight up and down and file just gently. Take your time is important. And what you want to do is file it to where half the thickness of the string, you've put it about halfway down in the nut. So I can see that's not quite enough. So we're going to file some more. Also kind of support the back side of the nut with my finger, so as you're pushing on it, It keeps from pushing too far on it. Just supports it. So what we came up with is 10-30 seconds difference between each one. So now I'm going to mark each side of the string. We have the nut slotted, and now we have to get the strings spaced over the frets so that you're not having to press hard. And when you press too hard on it, that changes the tuning of the string. And what I have is a string action ruler, and I use the one in thousandths, and I look at this and see that it's 50 thousandths. And what I would like to have it at is 30 thousandths. So and the same thing for this side, I just measure them all. This one's at 50 thousandths, so I know this nut is 30 thousandths too high. So what I'm going to do is loosen the strings and take the nut off and take a little bit of the height of the nut off from the bottom instead of messing up my nicely filed notches. I want to sand it a little bit and keep it fresh. But this is what it looks like. That's handmade there so far. So what we're going to do is take 20 thousandths off the bottom end of it, 30 thousandths. So I like to put it on a straight edge. Take my finger again as a guide for a lead pencil. And I've marked this, and we'll see. I'm sure it's not 30 thousandths exactly, but I just sand some of it down at a time, not all at one time, and then put it back in and test it, take it back out, and try not to go too far. That way I feel like if it goes too far, I have to start over again. So got my handy dandy little belt sander again. I'm going to file it off that way. Okay, what I've done is I marked it, and what I've done is taken off half of the space between my mark and what the original nut material was there. So we're going to put it in. That way, little baby steps on accomplishing what we're after. Strings are loose. Okay, it looks like the action's still kind of high here. Press down on the strings on the first fret. You see there's still about the 30 thousandths off. So I'm going to take it off again and shave it down to where I had the original mark. So, but never hurts to be, too safe about it. If you don't want to keep redoing it, having to buy another nut and starting from scratch, it's better to take the small steps. Be patient. So I'm tuning it because I want to get the tension on the nut here to where it pulls it down, because we do not have it glued in place. It's floating in there. And eventually I will want to put, like I said, take a toothpick with some super glue, 2 little drops on it, tighten it down, and that way it's not floating in there. I had a person that complained of fret buzzing and looked, and it's like, do you need new strings? He goes, yeah, while you're at it, go ahead, see why, put new strings on it. And whenever I pulled the strings off and turned the guitar over to clean the back of it, the nut fell off. So by it sitting in there, and I noticed it had been that way for a long time because it kind of had the wood polished. It wasn't rough like it had been filed and set. It had actually been in there polishing the wood by moving back and forth. So we're going to tune again, EADG. And we might be able to intonate it now that we have a full nut across, not riding on the first fret. And now you see we have the nut slotted and spaced for action. And now what we're going to do is go back to our original subject of how to intonate a guitar. We couldn't intonate this one because the end of the nut was broken off and the string was riding on the first fret. So that changed it a full half step then. So what we need to do is tune the guitar. So the one we had problem with was the G string. So we're going to do it. Go back to focusing on it. Okay, so we're tuned to open G. And now we go to the 12th fret. Hold down on the string. Yeah, it's a little bit sharp. All of it's going to. So what we're going to do is flatten it a little bit. And how we do that is lengthen the distance between the 12th fret and the saddles. So by lengthening it, I'm going to turn this screw to the saddle clockwise. We'll do a couple of turns, and then it's going to change everything. So we're going to need to go back. Well, looks like open G stayed the same. Maybe I didn't change it enough. Okay, still a little sharp. So we're going to move the saddle back, lengthen the distance. Okay, so now we've lengthened the distance between the 12th fret and the saddle by counterclockwise turning the screw, pulling the saddle back toward the end of the bridge. And so we're tuned to open G. And there we have it. So that's intonating. And if it's too sharp, then you shorten the distance between the 12th fret and the saddle. So it's just a matter of do one, go to the next, and down the line till you have all 4 strings done, or the same thing applies on 6-string guitars. So thanks for joining us today at Maxwell's House of Music in Repairland. I'm Steve Robbins, and I want to be your guitar tech.